name's Dane Clement. I owned a company called Great Dane Graphics. It is now a Stahls company. We announced that here at the show. So we're very proud of that. We're looking forward to the future. I've been doing artwork and graphics and separations since 1991 as Great Dane Graphics. So we've been involved in the apparel decoration since. We create artwork that's separated for screen printing, works on digital printing, dye sublimation, direct to garment, as well as some of this. So what we're going to do is I'm working on a Mac. So if you've been in seminars earlier today, it's probably all PC based mostly. But I'm going to show you how we can use Illustrator to do similar things as CorelDRAW does. And basically what we're going to do is some of this stuff here. I'll show you some samples and I'll show you what we did to create them. So I'll pass this around and you can take a look. It's got some foil here at the top and some looks like a flock. That one is strictly CAD-CUT, very simple, just Illustrator, nothing else. This one is a little bit of hybrid. It's got Photoshop work in it and Illustrator work. So this is a CAD print. So basically we print the texture and then come back in and cut it. So the way I created this was using both of those programs. So we'll be going back and forth a little bit with both of those here today. We're also going to show you how to do this kind of stuff, wall graphics, digital graphics. These things can be done on a wall. You can print this, cut it for shirts as well. So basically we've done a lot of themed outlines and themed designs for ID, and you guys can order those, put the photos in them, and they can print them and cut them for you, or you guys can do them yourself. So what we'll do is I'll show you how we take this photo from a regular photo and blow it up in Photoshop so it's this big. There's a trick to that, and I'll be showing you what that trick is, because if you just take a regular photo and you blow it up to, it won't be this big. This was to 14 inches wide. What we're going to do for this file, for instance, we're going to start off with a file about 16 inches wide by 20 inches tall at 300 DPI, which means that's a plenty good enough, high enough resolution file for us to start from. Then we can literally blow it up in the RIP software, whatever printer you have. If you have one of these, or if you want these guys to do them for you, like I said, we've tested this thing 10 ways from Sunday, and we've taken a file that's 16 by 20, 300 DPI, we've blown them up to 52 inches, and they're crystal clear. All starting from your standard photo, which was, probably about this big. You just have to blow it up in Photoshop a specific way, an exact way, otherwise it gets all blurry. If you go to Photoshop and say I want this thing to go from 7 inches to 14 inches, and you just plug that number in and you hit go, it stretches everything, blurs everything out, and it's a horrible piece. So with a little trick that I'm going to show you, it'll look awesome. I'll pass this around if you guys want to take a look at it. The shipping kind of got a little bit beat up, but rough around the edges, but it'll work. All right. Okay, so recognize this. That's the design that we just passed around. So what I'm going to show you is ways to make adjustments to the text rather than just type and put 2 words and be done. We've actually used a fleur-de-lis in here, made it work with the inside the B, just change it up real small, real subtle, not a whole lot of time, really quick little things that we can make our finished piece much more interesting. So with that said, let me get rid of this palette. I'm going to go ahead and type out my word. Change the font. Size anyway. Now in Illustrator, if I wanted to, once I set my type, if I grab just one of these corners like this, you can see my cursor changes. So I could just stretch it out into anything I want. If I want to keep it constrained so it stays proportional, all I got to do is hold my shift key. So if I click on the corner piece, hold my shift key, and I drag it out, you can see it stays proportional. If we don't want it that way, you can always do some fun things. Totally up to you, whatever look you're looking for. But what I will do is change this font to that bolder font. Let's see. Something like this. And I'll close this. Take my second word, I'll type it as well. We'll change that font to the script. And we don't want all caps because it's very hard to read. That's better. So we'll do the same thing. I'm going to grab the corner. I'm going to hold my shift key to constrain proportions. Actually, no, I won't. I think I like it a little looser. So we'll do something like this. Now, the same thing in Illustrator. All we have to do is go to the corner piece. So if I grab this corner piece and come right outside of it, you see the cursor changes to a little arrows, which means we can click now and rotate this thing just by clicking and pushing it this way. Now I'm going to go ahead and move it. What I want to do is I want to make it interact with the B, but just the B, not the other letter. So we just kind of overlap it a little bit. But what we're going to do before we finish is we're going to make those things unite so it becomes one cut line so we can cut around everything. All right, so I'm going to grab the word big, and we're going to create outlines so we can turn this thing into different art pieces and rather than text. So I'm going to go to my type menu. I'm going to come down to create outlines. So now the word big is now artwork. It's not a font anymore. And I'm going to do the same thing for the word easy. So we go to type, create outlines. So now we have artwork. If I hit Command Y or Control Y or in Illustrator, or go here to the view menu and show you that it's an outline. Now if you notice over here on the right hand side, this is your shortcuts. Everything on the right hand side of this thing is your shortcut. So if you see stuff like this outline has Command Y. That means if I hit those two keys, I can visualize it or view it like this. So I went ahead and undid it a little bit too much. So I'm going to go to create this one outlines as well. So now we have our art. Now you see, if we were to leave it like this, we'd have problems cutting it because where the E overlaps the A and each of these letters are all on top of itself. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure it turns it into one element. So we'll take care of that here in a minute. I'm going to select the word big. It's all one word. It's just artwork. So now if I deselect it or ungroup it rather, I can turn them into individual pieces. Now I can grab it and change it up a little bit. We happen to just have this fleur-de-lis as a separate piece of artwork, like a clip art, something that we might have done in the past. So I'll use it. You can use any clip art in this area or in this particular example. And I'm just going to copy it over here. We'll put it on top of the eye like this. But we're going to use this same thing as you saw before. I was just seeing in the sample for the inside of the B as well. So what I need to do there though is if I click on this word, or the B rather, the letter, you can see it selects the interior pieces and the outside pieces. So what we have to do, that's called a compound path inside of Illustrator. We need to release that compound path. We need to make it into 3 different pieces. So the way we do that is we go to the object menu and we come down the compound path, but we hit release and it's going to split them up for us. So now I can select just those little pieces and get rid of them. And I'm going to do the same thing with this word. If I click on the word easy, I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, before I do it, what I want to do is join this stuff. So in Illustrator, they have a pathfinder tool. I mean palette. I don't have my glasses. Sorry, I got to back up a little bit here. Pathfinder under the window menu. That's going to bring up these little things. So basically, these are the unions or the weld stuff in Corel. You can do different things with different paths. So if I click on this first button, it'll unite them like this. So I just clicked it once, and what it did was it turned all those little pieces into one piece. So now I have a cuttable line that comes around the E, stops at the A, and then comes back around and continues. That's compound path. We just have to release it in order to make this work. So right now what I'll do is select the B as well, and then the E. If I hold the shift key and click on the E here and do the same thing, click that same button, we've just joined those 2 pieces into the same thing. So now we've taken both words, made them into one cuttable outline piece. So now I'll take the fleur-de-lis here. In Illustrator, if you hold the Option key or your Alt key on a PC, it will duplicate it. So I can just make another one just by simply dragging it over and duplicating it. So now if I hold the corner piece, I want to reduce the size. So I'm going to hold my Option or the Alt key, and I'm going to start from the middle. With my Shift key selected, it's going to grow it from the center of my piece. So now I can make it much smaller and put it in position where I want it. So now we have that one there. I'm going to click and hold and drag down. If I hold my Option key again, it's going to duplicate it. So just that fast I was able to grab my piece, put them in there. So what I'll do now is make a compound path of this whole thing again. We released it before because we needed to break it apart in order so we can change it up and move things in. Now that we have it fixed or finished, we want to make it one piece again. So with all this stuff selected, if I go to the object menu and come down to compound path, I'm going to make a compound path with that piece. And when we do that, we see it like this. So now it's one color, one outline cuttable path, and then everything is fit together just like it's supposed to. So if I show you in preview again, here it is, and there it is full. So you can see these are now, we just took a simple, very simple graphic, turned it into a little more interesting rather than a normal boring base. So this is a real simple piece. That's how I would do this in Illustrator. Any questions on any of that yet, by the way? All right. Let's work on the next one. The next one we'll do is the dolphin that you saw on that blue shirt that we passed around. Has a texture in it, has some paths in it. Well, that one's a little bit more involved because it was a little bit more involved to create the artwork initially. So what I want to do is we're going to come over here and I'm going to show you my sketch. So I'm going to open it up. And there's our original rough thumbnail idea. We want to create some design that looks tribal, that's easy to weed, you know, because if you notice there's not very many holes as in our concept stage anyway. We just put these lines, made them come in, left them open at edges so we can get one pull and we got a nice piece. So that's where my concept started. So what I'll do is I'm going to open this in Photoshop and I'll show you how I built the path. We're not going to take the time to do the whole thing, but I'm going to get started so just give you an idea. Now what I like to do in Photoshop is when I'm going to trace something, I'm going to manually trace this because I can make adjustments to it and create. If I want to change something on the fly as I'm building it, I can do it that way. So I could do a real nice clean marker drawing or something, scan it in and then have it auto traced and that sort of thing. It's just as easy and quick for me to do it this way. So if I double click this background layer here and just hit OK, now it's a transparent piece. I'm going to create a new layer underneath it and I'm going to reduce the opacity like this. What I'll do is I'm going to fill the bottom layer with white. So if you notice my foreground color is set to white. If I hit my D key, that will set it to default colors, which means black and white. No matter what color you happen to have chosen in Photoshop, it's going to always go to black and white. But a real quick trick that I like to do when I fill my graphics, I'm going to hit my X key. You hit D, it goes to black and white, and X will exchange those two colors. Basically, put my black first or white first, whatever I'm happen to be working on. So if you notice, it's now white. My layer over here is selected, because you can see that blue bar means that one layer is clicked on, that one layer is selected. So if I hit Option or Option Delete or Alt Backspace, it's going to fill that layer with white. So we just did two steps to make it, push it back so I can now trace over it. I'm going to go down a little bit more, something like this. So if I go to paths, just so you can see what this is, we're basically going to we're going to draw in our cutting path. So let me find my pen tool here. I'll zoom in a little bit. And what I like to do is find a starting point. So looking at this image, I want to find typically I like to find, you know, sharp points inside of a corner, outside point, things like that. So I'm just going to start here. I'm going to click it once. And these are Bezier handles. When I'm going to move over a little bit, and I'm going to click my mouse, and while I'm holding my mouse, I'm going to pull out this handle. That's called the Bezier handle. That's a curve that allows us to shape that line into any direction that we want to go into. So if I do like this, and I want to basically, I'm going to roughly trace my original sketch, I can click and let it go. Now I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to click my mouse. And if you notice what happened, that Bezier handle is sticking out way over here. But we have a dead space in there. A little trick, what I like to do is when I'm hit Command or Control Z, I just undid it. If I hold my Option key in Photoshop and click inside this little point, that Bezier handle goes inside that point. So now I can start off in a new direction without having it sweep around my edges. So if you're going to change direction on your path, click on it with the Option key and it'll put the point inside. So now when I go, it starts off as a straight line until I pull out that handle again. So it just allows me to shape my image as on the fly. So I can do it again, click on it there, and click up here and then pull it out and just make it match. Since this thing's a nice soft swoosh, basically just fluid lines, I can click way over here and then just start pulling it in. You know, some people will, other friends even in the business, they'll click all around the element, just single click, 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 click. And then they have to go back and pull the handles out and make the adjustments. A lot of people do that, and I'm not one of them. I think that's working twice as hard. If I'm already right here, I'm just going to pull my handle out and get it over with. I don't have to come back and revisit. So that's why I like to draw it this way. So I'm going to come down to this point. I'm going to come up, pull it out. Maybe start from here. Make it match. I'll hold my Option key or the Alt key. Watch that handle disappears. Now I can start over in a new direction anywhere I want. And I know it looks like it's taking forever for me to do this one little line because I'm talking, but when you're home working, you're not stopping in the middle of everything, it's pretty quick to do. And the reason I like to do these paths in Photoshop is once I have it cut, it's always there. I can always go back to it, refer to it, select it, paint it, fill it with colors. You do the work once, but the advantages are huge. Lots of things you can do with it. So I guess with that, I'll just do one more little piece here. I'm going to find my starting point. Here's happens to be a tip. I'll click and drag it out. Once again, click again, drag out the handle. Now I'm going to change directions. So in order to change directions easily, I hold my Option key, click on that point, that Bezier handle goes away, and then I can start over. Clicking out this way, and just keep going around it. And like I said, you can, I can on the fly make that decision to just leave it wider there at the bottom. I can just change it up as I go. And we'll just finish it off. So if I go back to my layers and I turn this piece off, you can see my path is cut now. So that'll be my cut path when I'm done. So, and what I'll do is I'm going to skip from this one to the finished path. You see how I built it, save the time, you'll get the idea. Alright, let's see. Alright, so what we have here is, here's a path. When I go to my paths, and I'll select it and turn this layer off. That's my finished outlines. So if you notice, they're open. They're open here, they're open there. There's very little cavities in this thing. So once you cut it, it weeds really easily. It's nice and clean. It's exactly what we wanted. So now I'm going to go to the art part. And I'm just going to show you what we have here. This is a this happens to be a photo of the Caribbean Sea. I shot it in Cozumel. Nothing special, just for a texture. Just pull the picture. I did run an artistic filter on it, which I'm going to try to show you. It's kind of hard to see here with the lighting in here. But what I'll do is open up the original water file. We'll work on that filter a little bit, then I'll bring it back in. I'll show you what else we did to it. So. There's the actual photo. I'm going to zoom in just so we can see the texture a little bit. Like I said, the lighting's pretty rough, but this is just a photograph. So I'm going to work on some filters. Photoshop has tons of filters. So if I go to the filter menu, you can have a lot of fun just playing around and testing and trying things out. This artistic filter, as I think we use a dry brush on here. So I'm going to click on dry brush, but if you notice, color pencil, all these things will give a different look. And what I'll do is I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to click on dry brush, and it's going to open up the artistic filter document. Now, it's, like I said, it's a little tough to see with the thing, but you can see the texture there. And as I move this piece around, it created that. So that one's the dry brush. You can hit all these other ones just selecting the image over here that you see, the little preview image, will show you all these different looks that you can get without doing much effort whatsoever. It's kind of film grain. That looks interesting. So you just pick something that you like. You can kind of see how it changes. Plastic wrap is kind of bizarre. So I'm just going to go with the dry brush for now. You have controls over here. We can change the size of things, which means the brush size, the dabs that it creates, the textures, everything else. We can kind of completely control that stuff by these sliders. Every single filter has, you know, its own version, so you can change the size of the blurriness and the smudges and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit OK to this. So I have a brush size of about 4, looks like 4 or 5, detail at 10, and texture all the way up to 3. So if I hit OK, it's going to run that filter, just applied it to my image. So we took a photo, turned it into kind of an artwork. We sort of messed it up a little bit. Well, that looks pretty good, but sometimes what looks even better is if you add it again without having to go do those steps. If I just go to the filter menu and I hit this where it says dry brush again, see that's a Command F or Control F on your PC. What that's going to do is it's going to redo the filter. So I'm going to go ahead and just let my mouse go, and it just intensifies it. See it? So I changed a little bit. You can keep doing that as many times as you want. It's going to change the look of it. If you don't like it, you Control Z and you go back to where you were. But it just a way to simplify and make things a little bit easier. So with this being the artwork now, the photo that's going to fill in my cut line. You saw the sample. It's got a blue printed water texture, cut lines on the outside. That's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to go back to my original here, or my working document anyways, and I'm going to show you this. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on my path, and I'll see if you can see it. You see what happens? What we can't do is we can't take the path and we can't select it and fill it with color or fill it with this photo and then take it and cut it on the printer. The reason being is if that, you know, the media moves or whatever, it's going to cut around. You have to expand the texture, you have to expand the color, you have to expand whatever it is that you're working on, and then cut inside of it. So when you weed it away, it's nice and clean and it's just texture or it's just photo or whatever it is that you're working on. So you can see the cut line is inside the print image. Well, this is how you do it. I'm going to go to my layers again. I'll turn off this thing just so you won't get confused when you're seeing it. I'm going to turn on my layer, my photo layer, which actually does have the texture. If you double click the little eyeglass, this the zoom tool here, if we double click that, it's going to zoom in to 1:1, which means this is the quality. That's 100% of what's going to happen. So if you want to see if your image is blurry, if it's dirty, if there's erroneous pixels anywhere, you can do like that. If I hold my space bar, that's at the bottom of the space bar here. If I hold that, or you see a little hand, that means I can move the image. I'm just moving the view of the image. I'm not actually moving the image. So I'm just going to move stuff so I can see it. And I do like this texture. That works for me. So now I can just zoom back out. Hit Command or Control 0 will zoom out the whole document. So now what we did was we're going to go to paths, right? And I'm going to turn this off for a second. I'll go over here, click on the path. And in Photoshop, at the bottom of your paths palette, you can create a new path. We can turn something into a path if that's what we're working on. But what I'm looking for is this one right here, this button. If I click on that, it's going to say it's going to load this path as a selection. So when I click it, you'll see these little marching ants. That's Photoshop's way of grabbing something and making it active. Now it's activated this shape, so now we can do stuff with it. We can copy and paste, we can fill it with things, paint it, whatever we want to do, and it will only affect inside those marching ants. It won't go anywhere else. So if I go to my layers here, for instance, and I do this, you see my water layer is selected, my marching ants are selected. So now what I want to do is I want to expand it before I grab it. If I go to the select menu, I come down to modify, I can expand this selection. Remember, what we're trying to do is we want to get the water to be a little further out than our cut line. So that's what I'm doing now. This right now is our exact cut line that's selected. We're going to expand it, and I'll just expand it by, say, 25. I think, yeah, 25 pixels should work. It's a full-size document. So I'm going to hit OK. If you can, it's going to be difficult to see, but if you can watch these marching ants, you'll see it's going to get wider and fatter all the way around it. So I'm going to hit OK. So it happened. So now with my photo selected, if I hit Command J or Control J, it's the same as going to edit, copy, and then edit, paste. It'll put whatever's the selection on its own layer. So one step, two shortcut keys, and I just went through, copied and pasted. So this is what I have now. So now if I go to my paths palette, you can see see where the cut lines are. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this path from Photoshop and I'm going to bring it into Illustrator, and then I'm going to put the water in the Illustrator as well. Then we can print it, and then it can be cut at the same time. So in order to do that, my path, if you notice, is just called Path 1 since I didn't name it. That's just default things. So if I come over here to the File menu and I come down to Export Paths to Illustrator, however many paths I have in my Photoshop file will automatically save out as an Illustrator vector file. So I can bring that path straight into Photoshop, straight into Illustrator and work with it. So here it is. I can select them. If I have multiple ones, I can select which one I want. If I don't, I can just hit OK, and it's going to go ahead and save this file. And I'm going to go ahead and just name it Dolphin, and I'm going to put a bunch of 3s and put it on my desktop so I can find it easy. I'll hit Save, and it's just taking that path, making it an Illustrator file all by itself. Now, another thing about Photoshop, and the reason I like to make my paths in Photoshop, Photoshop's preview is much better than Illustrator's or Corel Draw's preview, hands down. So if you got a photo and you want to trace something, if you bring it into Photoshop and you work your path tool, you can get much tighter and a much better, more accurate path in Photoshop than you can in Illustrator or Corel. What happens when you do it in those programs, it's going to want to give you that 1-point preview or a half a point preview. So it's going to, you click the path and then it's going to put a line on it. Whereas here we can zoom right in and get specific, like right on top of some certain 2 or 3 pixels, and create that path and work with it that way. It's just it's a much more accurate path. So if I'm going to create a path, if I'm going to cut something out of a photo, I'm going to do it right here and take care of it in Photoshop and then bring it to wherever I'm going to work in. So I just saved that. Now I'm going to turn this off. We go to layers here, turn this one off. Now these 2 are the only ones previewed, just my water with my texture. I'm going to flatten it. So if I go to this little flyout menu, if you notice in almost every application, it will have this little document in the upper right hand corner. If I click on it and hold it, I can choose to flatten that image. So I'll do that. It's going to ask me, you sure you want to do that? I'm okay. I'm going to save the file now as the water texture. I'll put it on the desktop again. And I'll hit save. So now we can hide Photoshop and go into Illustrator and finish this file. I'll just create a new document. So if I go to File menu and I come down to Open, since it is an Illustrator file now on my desktop, here it is, the Dolphin's a whole bunch of 3s. I'm going to hit Open and just choose Legacy Board, Crop Area, and I hit OK. Now it doesn't look like you don't see anything on screen, but if I go to my preview, so I go to View, Outline, Command or Control Y, you'll see the image is there. So right now we have a full vector file that we just immediately brought in from Photoshop right inside of Illustrator. So I can select this way. We can give it an outline color if we want. If I had a color in there. Oops. I don't know what happened to my colors. Come on. I don't want to fill it with that. I'm going to fill it with none. But I'll stroke it with this. Just to give it a color. Doesn't matter what color it is. So we can see it, basically. So now what I can do is I can go to the File menu and I can come down and I can place the photo. Here's the dolphin water, right? I hit place and it covers it. Well, now if I just go to Object and grab my Arrange tool and send it to the back, what it does, if you notice, they came in exactly the position that it's supposed to be. Because when we're working on a Photoshop document, whatever size document you have it's done. When we exported those files, it saves that as a cropping board. Your legacy board, remember we looked at, and it saves your cropping board. So it saves everything. That comes into Illustrator, then you bring the other piece and it's exactly where it belongs. You don't have to fudge it, move it, work with it. It's right on top of just like it was in Photoshop. So now I can take this file, I can save it as an EPS file, we could print it, cut it, and be done with it. So that's how I handle those type of images. I'm an Illustrator user. I don't use CorelDRAW. I work on my Mac. They stopped Mac versions. I have CorelDRAW. I use it because I have to, but you know, I use this because I want to, and this is, you know, that's how I do it. So I'm an Illustrator guy, Photoshop guy, but we can still work just as easy as anything else because everything's ready for us, just like, you know, the other programs. So any questions on any of this? I mean, I know it was a little bit, kind of a lot of little steps, but pretty simple. Start off with your photo, create a texture, cut your path, however it's going to be. You could take a, you know, a photo of a bottle, outline the long neck bottle and bring it into something, and you got all kinds, whatever your creativity is, you can just do it like this. So all right, let's go to the wall graphic here. Now what I want to do is I'm going to try to show you something on here, on this photo first, just because you can see it, and I know you didn't see a sample with the tiger, but that's okay. What I'm doing here is I'm showing you what I think is the most important thing I can show you when working with photographs. So, oh boy, this is going to be tough. What we're going to do is we're going to optimize this file. I'm going to start off with a picture that looks okay, and we're going to make it look really good in 6 simple steps. So if you write these steps down, they're always the same. That's why I teach it that way. There's 10 ways to do anything in Photoshop, but I'm going to teach you one direction, one recipe, so you follow that recipe, you have the same results at home. And basically you start off with your original artwork. It is an RGB file, is what I like to work in, and you'll see why in a little bit. We're going to take this image and juice it up and make it look nice and a whole lot better. And it'll take less than a minute for you to do at home. So you can write these 6 steps down, put it next to a little cheat sheet next to your computer, and always get the same results with your files as well. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the image menu, adjust, and adjustments, and I'm going to come down to selective color. That's step number 1. Inside that step number 1, I'm going to go to neutrals. So I click on this little red drop down, right, the reds, and I go to neutrals. What I want to do is lose the gray matter. I'm going to get rid of the fluff that's in my image. So I'm going to hit 3s. Typically I'll start with 3, I'll put a 5, up to 8, depending on your file. I mean, I've used them all the way up to 15 before. It just depends on how much gray matter or fluff is inside your document. So it's, I'm going to try 5s, I'll take a look. Now if I turn my preview off, on and off, you can see kind of what's happening. You can kind of see. What we're doing is there's gray matter inside the color area, we're getting rid of it. There's even gray in a rainbow. You just don't see it, but it's in there. It's noise. It's muddying up the colors, if you ask me. So the first step we do is remove those. This looks pretty good. I'll hit OK. The second step is the image adjustments, hue saturation, or Command or Control U by the little shortcut that's over here to the right. So if I click on this hue saturation slider, here's my slider. All I'm looking for is the saturation. I'm going to click and drag this thing over until it looks good on screen. Now I know it's hard to see, but if I turn my preview off, you can see that tiger's starting to come to life. I'm going to hit OK to that. My next step is image adjustments, brightness and contrast. Now I get asked all the time, why don't I just write an action for this? I'm not an automatic button guy. I hate them. I figured, you know what, this is less than a minute. You can spend less than a minute on your customer's piece. It's opening it up, a couple of steps, and you're done. Sometimes it's 30 seconds to get through them. What I want you to do is just hit Use Legacy if you see it. If you don't see Use Legacy, you just have an older version of Photoshop, and that's fine. What you want to do, though, is just put a 5 in the contrast. It's the only time I'm ever going to say plug in a number, because all the numbers depend on the files that you work on. That's the trick. So I'll hit OK to this. My next step is I'm going to go to Image Adjustments again. I'm going to come down to Levels. Now what Levels is, it's a histogram they call it. This shows us where the color data is in our file. So if I look, I have an awful lot of color data in my 3/4 tones and my shadow areas. I don't have a whole lot in my highlight areas. So you can tell the difference because the left triangle is black here. This is a gray, that's my midtones, and the one on the right is a white, that's my highlights. So we can affect the image by moving these things around. The reason I said I work in RGB is because it's a larger color space, but it also gives me this neat little bonus. If I hold my Option key and I click on this black triangle, I can wig out my screen, right? But there's a reason we want to do this, and not just to have psychedelic fun. what we want to do is hold that, move it over, and I want to, you see there's no black pixels in here? What we're going to do is we're going to set a black point and a white point. We're going to compress the image, the color data in our file. So if I hold my Option key, click on this triangle, and I start moving, I want to stop when I see black pixels. So right about there. I have black pixels underneath his chin and inside his nostril there. So I can visually see a black point. Can't do that if it's a CMYK file. If you're moving things around and it doesn't, you can see something's happening, but you can't see a black pixel, it's because you're probably in a CMYK file. Just make sure you're working in RGB and you'll be good. The next thing, I'm going to hold the Option key or the Alt key, and I'm going to click on this white triangle. And I'm looking for white pixels, right? Look at this image. It's a tiger. It's got white stripes, you know, on top of his eyebrows and stuff. There's all white all over this thing. If you click and hold this triangle, though, no white pixels whatsoever. So what you want to do is move this thing over, knowing that there's white in this image somewhere. And then when you start seeing the white pixels, like right here, it's in his arm there and it's up in his eyebrow, we just compress the color data to this. So if I turn my preview off, see what I'm saying? It's hard to see, I know, but you can see drastic changes. And if you're sitting in front of your monitor, each step we do makes that file better. Because you have to remember, this is as good as it's ever going to print or look on a monitor. Then it steps down, you know, CMYK colors or screen printing. For screen printing plastisol, you have to separate it. So we got to get it to look as good as we possibly can on our screen. That's the task here. So I'm going to hit OK to this. Almost done. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the mode, and I'm going to change it to lab color. And if I go to my channels, this is what it looks like now. This says lightness. What the lightness is, it's the luminosity in our files. No, it's just the detail of our file, no color information. The color information is on these two channels. And it looks horrible. I don't know why that's the color data, but it doesn't matter. All I'm looking for is this one. So I'm going to select the lightness or the luminosity of our file. Now I'm going to sharpen it, and that'll be the last step. So we're going to go to Filter, come down to Sharpen, go to Unsharp Mask. Remember, just this one lightness channel is selected. So now if I hold my mouse down, this is my original. You should probably be able to see this. Look at his eyelashes in this little square here. When I let go of my mouse right now, see the difference? You see how much sharper his fur is? Or watch this. So even though it's hard to see, you can see a difference. We're fine-tuning just the detail. We're not going to corrupt or contaminate the color at all. And since that is the case, we can really sharpen this thing. The radius and the threshold we leave. You don't have to fool with that. We're just going to worry about the amount slider. So this guy's all the way up to 175%. And you can see inside that little square there, there's my original. There's my sharpened piece. So I'm going to hit OK. I'll convert it back to RGB. So our file's finished right here. So let's see what happens when I go to the File menu and Revert. It's tough to see, but you can see a drastic change. It's strong. It's amazing. It's Photoshop's magic in action is what it is. So if your customer brings you any type of photograph that you're going to print on a shirt or whatever, a wall graphic, whatever it might be, you want to run these steps. So with that in mind, I'm going to go right straight to this wall graphic now. We're going to open up the actual file. We created this wall graphic. You can create your own themes, come up with stuff. It's pretty simple. I'll show you how it's built and what you need to do to make it work for you if you're going to create your own. So here's my layers inside of Photoshop. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. What we want to do basically is we want to put a photo in this black area, just so it doesn't affect anything else. But in order to do that, if we look at the file size, I'm going to go to the image size here, go to check it out. We have a 300 dpi file. My width is 17 inches by 21 inches. So 17 by 21, 16 by 20. If you get something that big, your file is going to be pretty big. It's going to be, what I got here, 92 megabytes. But it doesn't matter. I mean, even the cheapest computers these days can handle these file sizes. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to open up this this other file, the photo that we're going to put in here. That would be this little guy. So looking at this image, I'm going to zoom it in a little bit. And we have, let's go to image size and I'll show you. We have a 300 DPI file. It's a digital photo, and it's only 6.8 inches wide. Well, my document's 17, remember? So I got to go from 6.8 up to 17. And once we get to that point, then our RIP software will take it wall size if we want. Here's the trick. You can't do this otherwise. If I just punched in, I wanted to go to 14, it will be blurry and horrible looking. You're going to do it in steps. So if I do it like this, I have a 300 DPI resolution. I'm going to go right up here in my image size dialog box. I'm going to change this pixels to percentage or percent, and I'm going to punch in 110. And I'm going to hit OK. And you saw the file got larger by 10%. I have to move it in 10% increments. I don't know why that is, but it works. I actually read that book, read that tip in somebody's Photoshop book, Scott Kelby, years and years and years ago. And it was the one tip that I hung on to, and I use it all the time because it was amazing. If I just punch it in, it gets blurry. If I don't, I do it this way. Do it again, image size, 110%. And there is no action we can write for this. You got to just go through the motions. But if I look at my ruler, we're already, where are we, about 8 1/4. So image size, go to percent, 110. It takes a little bit, but now we're a little bit over 9 inches. Do the same thing. You know, there's software out there, there's Photoshop, there's plugins, there's standalone applications that will take your file and blow it up. Supposedly, I own them all, and like none of them. I use this trick. It takes me a little while because I have to do the 10% deal, but it works. You guys saw that photo on that poster. It was, 6 inches, 7 inches. Do it again. We're about 11 inches. I want to go till I'm 14 or so I can fit it inside my other document. All right, we're at about 14 1/2. Almost 14 3/4 now. And if I can zoom in, it's still crystal clear. I don't know if you can see it, but there's no pixelizations, no JPEG junk. It's perfect. Look at this. That's the trick. You got to use it because it's awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to select everything. Right, just Command Control A, and if I copy it, Command C, Control C, I'm going to come into this document. Now, this is the way I built it. If I turn off the preview of my layers, we just have a baseball and the numbers, put it on a layer. We got his name is on a layer. You can change those kinds of things. The banners, here's the photo mask. That's where we're going to put this image. We have the background, so it's on a transparent layer. If I go to my path palette and click on that, you can see there's actually a cut path. What I did was went around this thing with my path tool, just like I did before with a dolphin. So now when I finish this graphic, I can take them both and export them and make that wall graphic. So once you cut your path, the outline path of this image, just like the dolphin, you got both of them come together exactly on top of themselves in Illustrator, and you're ready to go. So going back to my layers, I'm gonna just turn that on. What I'll do is I copied the photo, right? So if you notice this, if I click on this, it says Photomask. If I turn that off, that's just a black box. Watch this. Literally just that little shape. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the photo, but I'm gonna put it inside this box, and we can move it around and skew it and rotate it and do all that kind of stuff without affecting anything else in our image. So let's turn them all on. If I hold my Command key of my Control key on a PC, it's hard to see, but you can see there's I'm gonna click on this, hold my Command key. The cursor changes to a little finger with a little box. If I click on it, you'll see my marching ants. The Command and Control key and clicking on that layer will select anything on that layer. So as long as this Photomask layer was clicked on once, so you see it blue, hold my Command key, click it, or Control key, click on it, and it selects it like this. So now I can go to the image menu and come down, Edit menu, sorry, come down to Paste Special. This is Photoshop CS5. In version 3 and 4, it's just Paste Into. But what I want to do is go to Paste Into, and now I can move this guy around without messing anything up in my image. So we can rotate it, double click it, and it's ready to go. So I hope you learned something. I know it was a lot of information, and it sounds like they're throwing us out. Well, I'm going to be here tomorrow. I'll do the same class again. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them for you.